Welcome everybody. We're going to have another exciting session today um, with Dr. Swamy. We have a very interesting topic today. Does India have a place in the new world order? Given all the changes that we have seen so far, what's happening with the Quad and suddenly the new AU, KUS or AUKUS or whatever this new deal and what's happening in France working out, it's going to be a very interesting session. So what we want to do is hear from in what is India's role, because there's so many changes happening. Where is India sitting? Because India is right in the middle, literally, of all, because all of this is happening because of China. So, but where is India's role? So I think it's very important that we hear from Dr. Swamy about this. And I have Dr. Arvind Chaturvedi, my co-host, and he, after Dr. Swamy initially speaks, both of us will have some questions. We'll probably take some questions from the viewers. So without much delay, Dr. Swamy, it's over to you, and we'd love to listen from you.
Well, the topic worded is India's place in the New World Order. Well, let me first begin by saying what the old order was. The old order was bipolar. There were two major countries, United States and the USSR, which is sometimes abbreviated as Soviet Union. Now Soviet Union is unraveled into 16 countries, and the leftover portion with Moscow as capital is Russia. And so now we have Russia. So that bipolar order collapsed in 1991. And then United States was unipolar for many years. And then over the years now we find that slowly people are talking about China as the number two power in terms of the metrics, as they say, the GDP, the growth rate, the sophistication of manufacture, etc. Those criterion which are there for a world power. And in the old order, the two groups that came, the American-led group and the this USSR-led group, they were very ideologically cohesive. And the competition was between Western democracy and market economy against communist dictatorship and socialism. And there was constantly debate on which is doing better. So after the collapse, the United States was in the lead, and slowly China has been catching up. And then now it's some people even say that if you take the GDP on PPP terms, it's ahead of the United States. So now the new order is not bipolar. It's even if China has come to a number two position or number one position in economic terms, what we find is that there are others also who are forming, their centers. You have seen that France is no more would follow the United States blindly in the past, but not now. They are in fact getting. They have walked out of. They have sent back the U.S. ambassadors in protest against the Americans working behind their back with respect to Australia. So the new order, which is coming up, is not going to be bilateral or in terms of bipolarity. It's going to be multipolarity. But who all will come into it is the question. I would say about 10 years ago, it was very, people were talking quite openly about India being the third corner of the world triangle, and the third angle of the triangle, and a trilateral arrangement or a Teen Murti, and all kinds of phrases, at least in the first 10 years of this century. There was very much talk. In fact, I had once held a conference in Cochin, in which scholars, the Americans were represented by Harvard University professors, and the Chinese sent their best experts. Some of them were advisors to Mr. Xi Jinping, then also and now also. And they came from Tsinghua University. And in Kerala, there is a management institute run by GPC Nair, and we held it there. And it was acceptable. I mean, both all the Chinese, the Americans, they all accepted that we need to examine a future world with three nations. But now no more anybody wants to talk about India as a essential partner in any global issue or even regional issues with global implications. And an example of this is what happened in Afghanistan. Afghanistan, there were two major consultative meeting. One was convened by the United States, and the United States, lo and behold, invited Pakistan. Of course, China was there, and Russia was there, and Afghanistan, of course, was there, or rather, Taliban was there, and then, of course, Pakistan. So the Indians were left out, and it was a shocker. But of course, in our India, the media and all, they are quite gentlemanly. They don't, they don't. It's not like in America where they would have roasted Biden, but they've been much more quiet about it. But the Americans also, besides the Americans, the Chinese also called a meeting, and in that meeting also the same people, Americans were there, the Taliban was there, Pakistan was there, Russia was there, but not India. And considering that India had played such a major role in constructive work in Afghanistan, India being left out, there should have been much more debate in our country, much more consideration. But it's quite clear that slowly India is being eased out. I mean, if I want to give a short answer to India's place in the new world order, as of now, it looks as if India is going to have no place. Because we see that the way they are discussing it. Now, even on Quad, which in the beginning was seen as a major development, we find that the Americans have got many quads now, and they have created a new quad for Indo-Pacific, for which originally they had a quad with us and the Australians and the Americans and the Japanese, and this time they've got one specially for nuclear technology, in particular the nuclear-powered submarine. And therefore, in that sense, we found that India should have been there, because they are the whole object of that meeting, which has been scheduled, was to discuss the Indo-Pacific strategic threats and how it has to be dealt with, and the development of nuclear technology for that purpose. The French, of course, got very upset because they were left out, number one. And number two, the French had an agreement with the development of nuclear submarines with Australia, or they had some agreement with them to build submarines, but they had with Australia, and now Australia has just dropped the whole thing and gone with the Americans. So they're very upset. In fact, they're so upset that they have even withdrawn their ambassadors from both Australia and the United States. It's something unprecedented and unthinkable earlier. So now we have a situation where it's not cohesive, but we are concerned with India's place. Is India developing supporters? Now you find India is in fact losing supporters. SARC was a thing which Narasimha Rao had set in place. It worked quite well for some time. But now it's all the countries of SARC don't seem to be very enthusiastic about India. Some are, in fact, being very harsh with us in their idiom. For instance, Nepal. Nepal said all kinds of awful things, including making claims to Indian territory. Bhutan, for example, in the earlier time, they had called our army, but this time they have said very clearly we can deal with the Chinese ourselves. And they more or less agreed to what the Chinese wanted in Bhutan. And so there's peace between Bhutan and China. So in Burma, the same thing. The Chinese are very much in control. The military is totally dependent on the Chinese. And there also we don't seem to have lost them. Bangladesh is very, very coy, but it has a lot of trade with China, and so it never says a word against China. And they are not very actively pro-Chinese as, say, Nepal was at some stage. I hope with this new dispensation that's come of the Nepali Congress, the Prime Minister was still to win his vote of confidence. He was being nominated by the Supreme Court on the basis of a petition that was filed, and he is of course a very able man. But in fact, they have been very friendly to India. They have known me. That previous leaders who are now passed away, they knew me much earlier, and I had been to Nepal at their invitation earlier. And this time also I have got an invitation to come for a meeting of 4 days on the constitution for Nepal, but I'm not going because of this corona. But they're still, not pro-China, but they don't seem to be very pro-India either. So that also is there. Then go down to Sri Lanka, which was where Rajapaksa began his term by saying others are our friends, but India is our relative. And sometimes he said elder brother and so many other things. And then we have behaved badly with him because I keep very close touch on what's going on Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, what the problem was that after Rajapaksa took over, he found that the previous government had borrowed so much from China that they were not, the Sri Lankan government was in a position to pay the installments that were due for the repayment. So therefore, what happened is that Rajapaksa came here. In fact, he had also invited me for breakfast to tell him that if the government of India could say your payment of interest and amortization of the previous loans taken from India, that can be deferred till you have paid the Chinese debts. But our bureaucrats, the Prime Minister told him, instead of giving him a clear answer, the Prime Minister said, you better talk to our officials, Jaishankar and Doval. And Jaishankar and Doval, they gave him a runaround for a long time after waiting for 2 years. He then decided to tell the Chinese, okay, I can't pay you, but you tell me what you want from Sri Lanka. So they wanted a major say in the Humantota port, which previously in his earlier tenure he had got cancelled, but now they had to bring it back in some form. And then he also gave them some land in Colombo for setting up a research institute. And so he had been had to sort of bow to the Chinese so that they don't, get harsh with them because of non-payment of past loans. And the loans are being paid in kind, so to speak. So what we are seeing is that here is a person who wanted to be your friend. He did a great service to us by finishing off the LTT, which was a menace to India. It killed an Indian Prime Minister, and it had set, brown sugar, that is narcotics trade in Tamil Nadu, all kinds of rotten things, and of course killing people. especially Tamil leaders who are for democracy in Sri Lanka. They've all been systematically killed by the LTT. They fought our own army in league with the then Sri Lankan president, who was very hostile to India. And so, despite that, we were, treating him as a kind of a person whom we didn't want to please. And partly I get the feeling it's to please the Americans that we did that, because the Americans are very hostile to Rajapaksa, because Rajapaksa didn't allow for any mediation by either the Americans or by the Scandinavians. And he said, no, there's no question of mediation with the LTT. They are a terrorist organization. They've killed many of our top leaders. And so we'll finish them. And he did finish them. He finished them. Prabhakar, the leader, was shot dead. And that ended the LTT period. So him also. But nevertheless, he has retained his friendship with me, and he's invited me to visit so we can talk again. He again wants to see if there's any scope to restore and recover the friendship with India, but he doesn't want to deal with the bureaucrats. And so he wants to see whether it can be done at the political level. So I'm looking for a time when to go and discuss with him and then come back, because it's China, slowly getting a grip. It's not something that is good for India, and Sri Lanka is a very important thing. It's an island facing into the Indian Ocean, and the Indian Ocean is going to be a very important arena in the future, and therefore we may need to have Sri Lanka on our side on that. You'll be very interested to know that about 75 to 80% of China's trade by ships goes through Malacca Strait. And that means it comes from the Pacific Ocean, enters the Indian Ocean, and then near Car Nicobar, the Andamans and the Nicobar, there are two sets of islands, and the more southern one is called Car Nicobar, and its furthest point down towards the equator is called Indira Point. It used to be called something else before, but it was changed to Indira Gandhi's name. So the Indira Point, and across the Indira Point towards Indonesia, you will find that it's about a 70-80 kilometers long. That is the narrow passage, is called, which is ships from China and other countries go through. So if Indonesia and India sitting on either side of the Malacca Strait, as it's called, we decide to control it, well, these Chinese will have to salute us or do salam to us. That's the kind of position which during Nehru's period, he was only looking at Europe. And so we didn't develop these things. So I think we need to, therefore, develop our perspectives on that. Because if you want to be a world power, you must be able to do something to other world powers. Otherwise, nobody's going to take you seriously. If you're just doing goody-goody and have the spin and so on. Now, Modi is going to America not at the invitation of the Americans, but to address the general body of the United Nations. But because all of them are coming, Australians are also coming, and Japanese are also coming. So it has been decided to have a Quad meeting. But this Quad is not going to talk about strategic matters. It's going to be talking about climate change. It's going to be talking about vaccines. And probably India will get a big role there, because we have been doing quite well. Thanks to Bharat Biotech, we have been shown that we are indigenously in a position to produce vaccines. And if the Bharat Biotech is encouraged, they will be able to produce much more of the vaccines, which are much safer. In fact, they are highly safe compared to all the other Western vaccines. So, but there's no strategic issues in the agenda. And whether Biden will meet Modi or not, how can I mean, normally, if they do meet, it'll be for 5 minutes, 10 minutes for pleasantries. But the fact is that when the United Nations there, how many 200 world leaders come in the general when the general body meets in September, which is the time when all the top leaders of their governments come. So I don't know whether they're much one-to-one thing. But then there also we have to understand that there is a change since Trump has gone in the internal dynamics in the United States. Now, Ramesh is sitting here, and I hope he gives a little input. Sri Iyer is doing also a lot of work on this. How the American elite, you can't talk about the blue-collar workers because they don't care for foreign policy. But the intellectuals who also supply officials and so on, many of the officials today are very much come from the liberal left-wing crowd. For instance, the vice president, Kamala Harris, she is one of those liberals. And there are other congressmen who are of Indian origin who are very hostile. And the Pakistanis have a huge network with the help of the Muslim associations there. And so, therefore, how we going to handle that, that's going to be very important if you're going to think in terms of becoming a world power or a power which America can't do without, or America will treat us as well as they treat the Chinese. Whatever you may say, how much maybe the Biden may be against China, but his courtesy and his politeness with China is something you have to study compared to the language they use with us, which I, as having lived in America for such a long time, I have a better understanding of their idiom when they're when they're talking down to us and when they're talking on an equal footing with us. So what I'm saying is that we are moving away from the old bipolar world of Soviet Union or USSR-led coalition and the American-led coalition. We are moving away from this ideological thing, democracy versus communism, and market economy versus socialism. There's no more that debate that is going on. Now the issue is becoming something where what your national interests are they being looked and accommodated by smaller power countries and other countries because you're a world power, they don't want to be on your wrong side. And then the reliability of partners. Now, we have seen what the Americans have done. I mean, whether it's how much of it is our fault, how much is their fault, but the Americans should have been much more sensitive to Indian position on Afghanistan, and they should have had us present, but they did not, and they did not even raise this issue. But on the other hand, we have another issue which we have to deal with in our country. If you're going to be with the Americans, how can you be in the same lovey-dovey position with the Chinese and the Russians? And particularly Chinese, there's no question the Chinese have crossed the LAC and come into Ladakh and swallowed our territory, starting with Depsang, and now they're going all the way to Chushul. And they are, and the way they talk to us, you see, I find that very obnoxious. And I mean, some way I'm flattered that they have denounced me in their TV. And one of your websites, I think by Shekhar Gupta, says that the only person they discuss in CGTN, their television, national government-owned television, is Subramanian Swamy, only Indian whom they are discussing. And even Modi, they don't make any reference to. And the reason is that I am saying you have occupied our territory like a thief. And either you get out or we'll throw you out. If it takes us a little time to prepare to throw you out, will take a little time, but we are not going to change our idea. Now, I just saw, there was a BRICS meeting. It's the most useless organization. In fact, in the 2015, Mr. Narendra Modi personally told me, Mr. Amit Shah called me to his house for tea and tried to persuade me to become the president of the bank that was set up under BRICS. It was called the BRICS Bank. And I didn't tell them the truth, but I told them politely. I left Harvard to come to India, and I want to live in India. I'm not going to go live in China after this. So therefore, please, it's not. The salary was tremendous, 50 crores a year. It's a hell of a lot of money. But I want, frankly, I didn't think that this is going to last very long, because my friends who are my students at Harvard and went back to China and now have become in high places, they told me at that time when I went to address one of their university meetings that don't touch this BRICS Bank, because it's not going to last very long. So I'm saying that despite all the things that the Chinese have done to us, they have really betrayed us. You see, this territory is not disputed. It was mutually agreed in 1993 that we will, even if it is our territory and you're in occupation, we will not make an issue of it till the matter is settled by negotiations. And therefore, Aksai Chin was completely taken over by China because they had occupied it. And this Ladakh was completely with India. And there was a LAC drawn, mutually agreed. Now the Chinese have crossed that and come and occupied our territory. That's pure, blatant aggression. And even if you are friends with them, you have had 18 meetings and you have been in Mahabalipuram and you have been on a Jula, so what? If some friend turns a rogue, then you have to treat him like a rogue. And so therefore, what is the message that goes out? Now, we have been attending the BRICS, sitting with Xi Jinping and the Prime Minister sitting together as if nothing has happened, and we are discussing all kinds of other things. Similarly, there's another organization in which Pakistan is also there, SCO. Now the Iranians have also been brought in, Shanghai Cooperation Organization or something. Now there we are there. I mean, we're doing what? And in that, only thing we said was that Afghanistan, we should ensure that the government is something that respects the people. Some in a very mild set of words said. And what did the Chinese respond? I don't know what was the response inside, because it was kept, the conversation was kept secret. But it has come out in the entire, not just CGTN television, it's come out in the entire media, in newspapers after newspaper. India warned not to poison SCO cooperation as it wants to seek influence on Afghan issue. I mean, they're telling us, we are warning you, don't try to poison SCO, which we went and attended. So, I mean, how can any country think of you as a world power or even a potential world power if this is the way you sort of crumble on a matter? To date, the Prime Minister has not said China is aggressed or is an aggressor. In fact, he should have condemned them. He, in fact, in the initial said, "Koi aaya nahi, koi gaya nahi," as if nothing has happened. Then you find Jai Shankar blasting Mr. Rawat for saying, well, we are ready to take the Chinese on, throw them out. They are in vast areas of our territory. They said, no, this is not an opinion of the government of India. I mean, he's the CDS, and then the chairman of the defense something, you see. So all Army, Navy, Air Force, everything put together, the chairman of that is Mr. Rawat, who was earlier our commander-in-chief. and he says something, all right, you don't like what he has said. So then you have to call him aside and say, please don't say it again. And if you are afraid the Chinese might get angry, do push with them, saying that he's a little pagal, so it doesn't matter, or something, But to publicly, and that to a former bureaucrat and now being made a minister of external affairs, makes a public statement to please the Chinese that we don't share his views and he should not make these such statements. So, what kind of a world power are you going to be if this is the situation that you're so afraid? So, what I'm saying is, being a world power is an attitude. And that attitude means you would be ready to shed blood to protect your honor, your integrity, your territory. I don't see that India today speaks in the language. If it did, it would have said to the Chinese, get out, you have broken an agreement which you signed in 1993, in which we voluntarily gave up Aksai Chin so that the negotiations can take place without throwing mud at each other. So instead of doing that, we are not even saying that they are here. And then we go on telling lies. There was no negotiation taken place. The Chinese have not crossed the LAC. What rubbish! I mean, they come vast in 20 kilometers into our territory. In some places, 400 kilometers into our territory. So all this makes us look as not worthy of being a world power. And so if the Americans start thinking these Indians, just talk, and they want something for nothing, the worst thing you can do with an American is to take something without giving something. The Americans are all give and take people. They are not fools. And if you give something and not take something also, they think you're a fool. So you always have to negotiate with the Americans on give and take. So broadly speaking, like this, after Narasimha Rao brought those economic reforms and our growth rate went zooming up to 8% in 5 years, and we started producing all kinds of commodities. Previously, we were producing only one car under socialism. Now, plethora of cars. There was, the streets were full, electronic projects, consumer items, everything. So that transformation gave us a huge boost. Then Narasimha Rao wanted to set off a hydrogen bomb. But he thought he'll do it in the second term, but to his surprise, the Congress party sabotaged his victory and he lost. And so a coalition government headed by the BJP, Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee came, and that completed the work that Narasimha Rao couldn't, and an H-bomb was set off. So that also created a great, a wave in the world. This India, is now an emerging power. Then Indians went in software, like this Ramesh who's sitting here. My God, they dominated the software in America. And people are impressed. You see, earlier on they used to say it's a starving population. It all changed. I know that when I went first in 1962, people even thought that we had tails, and I've come after spending a lifetime, my early childhood, on a tree, on a branch or something. They had a very poor opinion. All that transformed. India are brilliant brains. They are the only ones who can take the Chinese on. So that also. Then pharmaceuticals. My God, we produce the cheapest pharmaceuticals, particularly the raw materials of that pharmaceuticals. And even today, the Americans acknowledge that if we are the whole world is to be, taken, vaccination taken against this corona, India is the country which needs to be given the mandate. And I think in this time when Modi goes to America and to Washington, this will be probably one thing that will be decided, that all developed countries will assist India in producing vaccines. Even there, as a member of the standing committee, in Standing Committee of Health in Parliament, I had to fight and see that the Bharat Biotech is also included, because in the committee they showed us that, while all that this Covishield fellow was doing was getting the raw materials, the prepared raw materials from England or wherever else, Denmark, etc., those countries which collaborated to produce that vaccine, and then he was just bottling it. Whereas in the case of Covaxin, this Dr. Ella and his wife, who run a company, they were doing everything from ab initio. It was a pure Swadeshi product, and very much cheaper. So therefore, now it's being recognized. The WTO, WHO, despite the Chinese pressure, is likely to give recognition to Covaxin very soon, and then it will become an international drug. And I think the Americans would like to invest in India with this company and ask them to produce for the whole world. So there you are. Then we had, again, Narasimha Rao's period, we created the SAARC, in which Pakistan was there, Nepal was there, all these. And we were the biggest, we were 70% of this entire region. So we were considered as the chairman. And that made a huge difference. But that has also gone net emphasis now. Now Pakistan is giving us lectures. They're even toppling governments here in Punjab, for example. So we are we have lost ground. In other words, if you see, growth rate is coming down. People get very angry with me on Twitter. Why are you saying this? And Nirmala Sitharaman is saying this. Nirmala Sitharaman is only spinning out spin. But if you go to the statistics produced by the Central Statistical Organization, a government organization, that shows the graph coming down. And I've been warning it since 2015 that this is going to happen. Some people have produced my old letters. I must say, in Twitter, some of our VHS people are doing wonderful way of digging up all these old letters and putting them up. Where I had written to the PM saying that this is the beginning of the decline. Please be certain. Nobody took it seriously, but that's exactly what has happened. We've come consistently down, and the last quarter before Corona, we only got 3% growth rate, which is what Jawaharlal Nehru got with the Soviet economic model, and we used to make fun of it. And so, therefore, I would say that's another major change that has taken. And earlier on, our growth rate was about the same in the entire post-Narasimha Rao period, down till about 2012 or 2013. Our growth rate was at the same rate as China. Now, again, China has gone ahead, and we are falling behind. Every day we're falling behind almost of everybody, including our neighbors like Bangladesh. So what was really thought of India as a third pole? America first pole, China second pole, India third pole, a triangle and a trikon, as they say, which would rule the world. We were the third largest GDP in the world. China was second largest, maybe now it's first largest, and Americans are the first largest. Same thing on population. China first, India very near China, but second, and Americans a little way down. After that, everybody is very far down. So population-wise, area-wise also big, and of course ours is a more fertile area because the Chinese and the Americans, 5 months of the year they have snow, so they can't grow agricultural crops. But what they grow in those 7 months is very high productivity, and our productivity is poor. But if tomorrow India becomes a productive agriculture, we'll feed the whole world, and probably be able to give almost rock bottom prices food to our own people. But this is a potential. Then the other potential is that we have the youngest population of all the major countries. 75% of our population is below the age of 35. And that's enormous. It's a young population. Average age of an Indian is only 26 years. And the Chinese, because of their one child per family policy, is now the average age is 35. Americans 37. The Europeans 46. Japanese 50, because they overdid the family planning in Japan after World War II. The Americans also forced it down on them. So therefore, this young population has got brains. It is demonstrated in America, it's demonstrated in England, it's demonstrated all over the world. Leave alone India, people don't get chances. All the time people are, trying to pull their legs and pull them back. So, but still India is now in a position to become the world's the scholarly world. We were once upon a time the world scholar. We gave everything, including calculus, to the rest of the world. So, but the potential is there now. Therefore, we can be the third pole without difficulty, and we don't need all this conference with the Americans and this thing. Oh, the Americans received your mail. All these press people, hopeless people. They are become such psychopaths. It's shocking. We don't need Americans. We don't need the Chinese. We can do it ourselves. And if we defeat the Chinese in Ladakh, we'll be internationally accepted as the world power. The Americans will then come to you with folded hands. So that requires that kind of mental outlook. So now the question is, where do we go from here and how? And I would say, please remember that the world is now a bit frightened of China. And is there only one country with that population and resources which can challenge China, and in its own battleground, because we have a common border. That's India, but that requires preparation and a mindset. That's what we are lacking. And two, we can produce for the world things which they find very expensive to produce. So we should focus on that. Instead of going to world conferences and then, he was very well received and then a double red carpet for them, all this is a waste of time. Get it in concrete terms where people recognize, yes, India is doing number one in this, that sort of thing. And don't be after other countries and do muska with them and appear to be propitiators, junior partners, and so on. I find that, as I showed you on China, they're giving us a lecture. Why do we have to? We should have said no. As long as China doesn't clear out of Ladakh, we are not going to have anything to do with China. What did you lose? Supposing you didn't go to the BRICS meeting, what did you have lost? If you didn't go to the SCO meeting, what would you have lost? They just said, no, if you want us there, please get out. And anyway, if you don't get out, we'll get you out in some time in the future. That would have created that. So this outlook we don't have. And therefore, we need to, be careful. It can't be everybody. You can't be with BRICS and the Americans at the same time. I've been in Twitter talking about Panchatantra bat. What was the problem there? The bat looks like a rat, but it has wings, so it looked like a bird. So when there was a war between the birds and the bat and the animals, according to Panchatantra, this bat went to the animals and said, "I'm like you. I look like a rat, and therefore I'm with you. Be sure that I'm with you." They went to the birds and said, "See, I got wings. I'm like you, so I'm with you." And then didn't go to the war. So after the war, when the war had gone sufficiently long, then they had a ceasefire and a truce. And then while talking, they said, "What happened to that bat? It's not there." So the bird said, "Yeah, we were looking for him because he said he'll be with us because he looks like a bird, he flies like a bird." "Oh, is that so?" But he told us that he looks like an animal, so he'll be with us. So let's both go and look for him. And when the bat heard that and went into complete darkness, that's why bats come out only in the night, and they are always hanging upside down so that nobody recognizes them. So this is the situation that we are in. You are neither here nor there. How can you be with both of the Americans and with the Chinese, and because they're junior partner Russians? Therefore, we must show that we can stand alone. And that is the final test of a world power, when you can stand alone. Mao Zedong used to say, I will eat grass, but I will not compromise with the West. That statement got him so much recognition, and China recognition. That is the thing we have to do. And so, how we are going to achieve all this? Well, I think, as I say always, as I conclude with this, no policy is worth it unless you structure it in 4 parts. Tell you what your objectives are. Find out, what your priorities are amongst those objectives. Then the strategy for achieving them and the resources for it. And when you do a scientific work like that, it will be very easy for us to become a world power with the weaponry which we produce ourselves. We can fire the imagination of the people. Indians can do anything. I mean, in 1962, Jawaharlal Nehru ran away, but the Indians got up and said, women took out their gold bangles and said, put it in the basket in public meeting, saying, no. So one meeting, I remember, reading about it, that there was a public meeting, and the speaker said, we don't have helicopters to take our soldiers there. So women there said, how much does a helicopter cost? Because here's our gold bangles and our sumangali, this necklace that they wear, and put them in the baskets. That was the spirit. This country is innately nationalistic. It doesn't beat its chest about it. But when you are in a crisis, you tell the people, they will make the sacrifice. So on that basis, you should create a program now. We want to become a world power. We can do anything. We can invent anything. We'll do that. We don't need any. We'll be members of America is a democratic country, so okay. But provided America gives us all the good weapons. But those who have stolen our territory, we are not going to be sitting with them under any circumstances until they return it, or we force them, defeat them and get our land back. That kind of determination we have. We will have a place in this new world order, who are there? Americans are a declining power. The Chinese, it's all hot air. Much of it is hot air. Whatever you see over the Chinese progress, you think that the industrial progress is genuine Chinese progress. It's all semi-finalized products of Taiwan, Philippines, all these countries, Japan, Korea, and then the Chinese just add value. For instance, Lenovo, everybody says Chinese computer. It's not a Chinese computer. It's a Taiwan. The Taiwan thing, the base, the circuit, everything is prepared and sent to China, and then China puts in the keyboard and puts the glass case and the cover, and then puts Lenovo made in China. This is how they are doing, and tomorrow all that stops. China finished. So we are, in that sense, don't overrate China. Of course, Chinese are very intelligent people. They have a long culture. They are not people who do not know how to think. They are, ancient culture. But we are the people who have not been defeated by anybody. The Muslims went to Iran, and in 15 years, they converted the entire Iranian population to Islam. Same thing in Mesopotamia, Babylon, Egypt. The Christians went to Europe and converted in 50 years, everybody to Christianity. But here, 600 years of Islamic rule and 200 years of British rule, we are still 80% after all that has happened. So this country is terrific in terms of rising to the occasion. In the emergency, all the educated people of South India voted for Indira Gandhi. That means they voted for emergency. It was this illiterate Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and all. They went to the booths and defeated Mrs. Gandhi and Sanjay Gandhi and wiped the Congress out. Didn't even get one seat. That's how the democracy came back to India. Not by the educated people, but by the illiterate masses of North India. So therefore, this country has got that spirit, but that spirit has to be awoken, and now we have to be told we are under threat. There's a threat from Pakistan, Afghanistan, Taliban, and China on this side, and Russia cheating us. So we have to stand alone, and our people will stand alone, and it will be again a renaissance for India, and India will again become a world power on its own right. That's what we should aim at. Not did they take us in, did they ignore us? Nothing of that kind. Thank you very much. I'm sorry it took so much time. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Thanks for that. Thanks for the excellent coverage, because you pretty much covered a whole swath of subjects. And putting the key here, Dr. Swamy, is the optics, because you're doing all talk and no action. And I think this cowardice or lack of courage stems from Nehru's time with the Security Council debacle. Time and again, India has proved itself to be a more a pusillanimous country, more not very courageous, don't want to take strong action kind of a thing. That is not going to sell in the world. I mean, essentially, if you look at, as you said, the US doesn't say, okay, you keep on taking, not giving anything. They're not going to deal with you, essentially. I mean, you put it rightly. Even now, Dr. Swamy, given where India is geographically positioned, I mean, does the world consider us of Southeast Asia, West Asia, South Asia? I mean, what are we? Asia. Even India doesn't have an identity in spite of it having all the wherewithal to be a superpower.
Yeah, just can I interrupt you?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
On this geography, very important question of geography. I did mention that our Car Nicobar is only 70 kilometers or 80 kilometers from Sumatra. And if we use that and the two of us come together and monitor Malacca Strait, then no Chinese ship can cross to go and sell their products. That is the kind of thing the positioning geography is giving us. Plus, of course, the northern Himalayas, which protects us from any major invasions coming from there.
But in spite of a strategic this thing, but India is not considered, are you a South Asian country or a Southeast Asian? We have no identity in the sense that we're not saying, okay, it is a force to reckon with in now the Indo-Pacific thing. It's just, I mean, India's position is really not taken seriously in anywhere. I mean, Quad has become quadriplegic right now, essentially on a wheelchair today, because it was just, as you said, it's just for producing vaccines or not. It is not strategic. It's more tactical in nature. And being left out now, I mean, what AUKUS, because as soon as AUKUS was announced, France immediately pulled their ambassadors. What is India doing? Instead of pulling their ambassadors or threatening China, we're having one more meeting of BRICS with them. We're doing whatever Hindu Chini bye bye or Hind Chini bye bye, Indian Chini bye bye. I mean, it is. I mean, we are not showing our mettle. Don't you think?
They are warning us not to poison it. I say, you're not taking their warning seriously.
No, isn't that having an impact on India's chance to sit on a global table? I mean,
yeah. Right. Anyway.
Okay, Arvindji, go ahead.
Yeah, Dr. Swamy, you have put the facts and figures, global facts and figures on the table to discuss where does India stand. Now, you started with the Cold War or the bipolar thing. In 1961, led by Jawaharlal Nehru, along with Tito, Nasser, Sukarno and others, we had non-aligned movement. This non-aligned movement, of course, had 120 countries and maybe some other observer countries and all that. Huge, maybe 2/3 of the world. And India was supposed to be leader of non-aligned. Of course, technically we were non-aligned, but we were still aligned with Soviet Union at that time during Indira Gandhi's time and during Nehru's time. So what has happened to non-aligned? Has it fizzled out? Whether it can be revived? Is there a role for India once again taking a lead? You see, you talked about the younger population of India. If you look at the GDP in terms of PPP, India is leading in South Asia, Southeast Asia, only except China in this neighborhood, about 20, 25 countries. India is a big brother. India has advantage in terms of demographic dividend. India has in terms of strategic advantage and of course historical advantage. So all these advantages can't be utilized it for our benefit. And going back to NAM, of course, one more organization you missed out that was just towards fag end of Vajpayee's time, BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC was Bay of Bengal initiative of multi-sector technical. I mean, they had meeting last year also. And but the question is, SARC has failed because of Pakistan or because of our not so good neighborly relations with all the SARC countries now. You mentioned even Nepal, the kind of equation we have. So what can be done in India? Whether NAM is more important, India's role can be enhanced there, and it can be revived.
Well, let me go by the fruit, eating the fruit and tasting it. In 1962, the Chinese came with full force and hit you and humiliated you. How many, what did the non-aligned countries do at that time? They said that the Indian territory is disputed and we should sit down with the Chinese and talk with them. So that was non-alignment then. Then in Bangladesh war, 1 crore Bangladeshis came into our country.
Yes.
I mean, we didn't do anything. It is Pakistanis who went and butchered all the women, raped all the women and butchered their men and, created chaos there. And there people came running to our country and, 1 crore. We said we didn't see any other way except, if Bangladesh is liberated, only these 1 crore will go. How many, the resolution came on Bangladesh in the UN General Assembly. How many people voted for India? Just 11. 194 voted against us. So what is non-aligned movement? We also try to go into that OIC. What is the Organization of Islamic Countries, OIC?
Yes. Some status was given to India.
Our then President Mr. Fakhruddin Ali Ahmed, when they didn't even give him a room. And when he wanted to shave his beard, they said, no, there's no water. Humiliated. So I'm saying the world will only, you can have all these melas and get-togethers and so on and so forth. People will come in big numbers and so on. The entire, how many European MPs came to Kashmir? Have they said anything once they left India? So the respect is for your ability to defend any country when it is in trouble. We didn't do it with Sri Lanka. We didn't do it with Burma. We have done halfway with Bhutan. So there is this unless we behave like a world power, nobody's going to treat you as a world power, no matter how many countries are with you for socializing. But to treat you as a world power, you must have intrinsic strength. And that intrinsic strength we have not developed. We have been always talking about peace and Vasudeva Kutumbakam and all that sort of rubbish. I mean, that was not, Vasudeva Kutumbakam was not meant for, not acquiring weapons. If one reads Bhagavad Gita, one can easily understand that, we don't want to be aggressive on anybody, but if somebody imposes aggression on us, we are going to teach them a lesson. So therefore, I don't think all this. You have weapons. You have a GDP growth rate which takes you, expands your GDP. You produce goods. You can. In our country, even today, world over, people are coming to our hospitals. But is anybody grateful for that? The maximum number who are coming are Arabs, but they will not vote for you in the UN. So, I mean, it's. I would think that I was focusing on the concrete measures of your world power status. If the Chinese have occupied your territory and you're not willing to take their name, nobody is going to regard you as a world power. They're going to think you as a coward. If today we beat the Chinese and throw them out and make them go back from the other side of the LAC, the whole world will be here in a queue. That is the basic fact of the world.
Yeah, but we did show our power in Bangladesh by
we did certainly, but till we actually won, what was the other world doing? The Americans sent you their 7th Fleet. You remember the task force of the 7th Fleet? What happened in the UN? I must say one thing which is not gone record. Everybody is giving credit to Mrs. Gandhi 100%. But two people made the difference. One was Jayaprakash Narayan, who went on a world tour to bring people over to our side. And the intellectuals of the world did side with us, thanks to Jayaprakash. Second thing is, and the crucial moment came of the capture of Dhaka, which had 110,000 Pakistani soldiers there. And the message sent by the Russians to Mrs. Gandhi and from Mrs. Gandhi to Manik Shah and Manik Shah to the commanding officer there, General Jacob: withdraw, don't take Dhaka. But he took Dhaka. And they court-martialed him. In the court-martial proceedings, they said, we sent you a telex and you did not obey. He said, there's no electricity there. How can I get telex? On that, he was let off. But he had to. But he resigned. Fortunately, the BJP took him in his wings and they made him governor. But we never gave him the recognition which was given to Manik Shah, the man who actually concluded. And then what did you do afterwards? 100,000 people, you just sent them away after giving them almost 1 year of biryani in the Simla agreement. All the areas we captured in Kashmir, we gave it back. It's ours. And we gave it back. Haji Pir and all this. So, Bangladesh is a thing that there was a momentum that was built in this country. I remember it because I was part of that momentum, and that's how it was.
Many of our prime ministers, you just mentioned Shimla Agreement and return of the land and everything. Many of our prime ministers are hungry for Nobel Peace Prize. In order to get that recognition from this organization called Nobel, they do so many things which people are really.
I not get it in the end also. How can you get it in the end? Obama, without doing anything, got it because America is a power. To make India into a power, you will get Nobel Prize every year.
And most important thing is the inconsistency. For example, when Rajiv Gandhi was there in Sri Lanka, we had participated in the IPKF, and of course, later on we took a lot of time. But ultimately, we helped Sri Lanka in getting rid of the LTT. But what happened thereafter?
No, I know. He was sabotaged by VP Singh.
Yes.
We had cleaned up that entire Northeast. And then we held elections. And the chief minister, for the first time in the history of Sri Lanka, there was a regional units. And Northeast had a Tamil chief minister elected.
Yeah.
And at that time, the LTT went and made a deal with Premadasa, the India-hating president of Sri Lanka, and a Sinhalese.
And when the whole world was accusing Sri Lanka of human rights and this and that, we did not stand with them.
Yeah, but I did.
No, I'm saying government of India.
I know.
So this is the
I
kind
know.
of inconsistency that we have.
Yeah.
Dr.
I know that. This is what we call as the mindset. Why I talk about mindset. You have to learn. That's what we have to say. I mean, if you go on getting all these spins in the media, and then you become satisfied, oh, lovely, bahut acha ho gaya. But it doesn't happen. We have to tell people, give the people the reality check. It's a responsibility of all media, intellectuals, and all to tell the people the truth and not be afraid that in case you are being discriminated against.
Dr. Swamy, I have one question here. I mean, like coming to this Afghan situation. Now, has China really taken advantage of the debacle that the US has done through the group pullout? Basically, have they kind of exploited the debacle in Afghanistan?
Of course, they have taken over Baghdad.
Part two of the question is, could
The
India have done the
Americans
same?
said we have destroyed all the equipment. No, they only destroyed trucks. But the aeroplanes, the drones. In fact, Pakistanis are now sending those drones into India, for which Amarinder Singh had put up a fight.
Because that is a very important topic, Dr. Swamy, because he resigned. So
Yeah.
maybe we'll talk about it another day because it's
The
important.
Chinese are smart. They didn't send a single soldier to fight for the Taliban. But in the end, because they have money and they have Pakistan as a stooge, so they got whatever they wanted without doing very much.
How
They
could
kept
India?
out.
How do you think India could have exploited? I mean, the sense that, I mean, obviously, since we don't have courage to
India
defend our
was
own
on.
land.
I understand. I will interrupt you to say I've been saying from day one. India making the hospitals, the parliament building,
Libraries.
universities, music
Libraries.
centers, all this has no value. If we had sent 40,000 troops, the Americans would have given them all the full arms. We would have finished the Taliban, I'm telling you.
And that could have helped us even in the POK area, right? I mean, in the sense that
Yeah,
now
of
China is
course.
exploiting that part.
Of
It's
course,
trying to say,
of
okay,
course.
we'll put a pipeline there
Of
or
course.
a train line there and stuff like
But
that.
what did our people say? Why we should send? Well, now when they come here, then you will have to send. Unless you are planning to defect to the Taliban.
Dr. Swamy, a quick, brief, maybe 3-4 minutes summary of what you said in Hindi would be appropriate, Doctor. Because a lot of viewers are asking for it, if possible.
अच्छा, मैं यही कह रहा था कि हमारे विश्व स्तर पर एक महाशक्ति के रूप में कोई दूसरा आपके लिए ये पोजीशन नहीं दे सकेंगे. ये तो हम लोगों को अपने आप अपने परिश्रम से और अपने क्रम से और हमारे कर्मा से हमें इसको सिद्ध करना पड़ेगा. जब यानी 50 साल पहले जब दुनिया में गुट बने, एक था अमेरिकन गुट और दूसरा था रशिया का, और इन दोनों के बीच में हमने कहा कि हम ना इधर होंगे ना उधर होंगे. हमारी झुकाव तो रशिया की तरफ से थी, परंतु हम कहते थे हम नॉन अलाइंड है, हम किसी के साथ नहीं है, हम अपने आप इंडिपेंडेंट हैं. लेकिन इससे हमारे देश का कोई भला नहीं हुआ. इंडिपेंडेंट होना ठीक है, परंतु इंडिपेंडेंट होकर शस्त्र के संग्रह करनी चाहिए. हमारी परंपरा में भी ये है. महाभारत में भी जब तय हो गया था कि दुर्योधन 5 गांव भी देने के लिए तैयार नहीं, एक सुई के नोक पे ही देने के लिए तैयार नहीं, तब पहला आदेश जो कृष्ण ने दिया कि जाकर शस्त्र संग्रह करो और पूजा करो. और वो सब करने के बाद ही महाभारत की युद्ध शुरू हुई. तो हमारे देश में आज तक हमने दुनिया में एक महाशक्ति बनने के लिए, विश्व शक्ति बनने के लिए जो आवश्यकता है, ज्ञान भी होनी चाहिए और शस्त्र भी होनी चाहिए. और हमारे देव और देवियां और या जो हमारे जो भगवान हैं, वो सब एक हाथ में कमल होगा, दूसरे हाथ में तलवार होगा। तो ये इस प्रकार के जब तक एक मंशा नहीं बनेगी, हम कितने भी भाषण दें, कितने भी स्वागत हो विदेशों में, हमें कोई शक्ति नहीं मानेगा। आज की परिस्थिति में जो पहले जो ढांचा थी विश्व में, वो सब लगभग खत्म हो गई। सोवियत यूनियन खत्म हो गई, अब चाइना उसको भरने के लिए कोशिश कर रही है। लेकिन हम भी एक त्रिकोण में एक कोण बन सकते हैं, परंतु उसके लिए जो करना है वो है पहले शस्त्र संग्रह। आज सिर्फ 2% हमारी जो जीडीपी है उसकी हम खर्च कर रहे हैं शस्त्र के लिए। अमेरिका 5%, पाकिस्तान 6%, चाइना 7%। तो हमारे सारे जो बांग्लादेश भी हमसे ज़्यादा खर्च करती है। हमारी जो सेना के लिए जो हमें व्यवस्था करनी चाहिए, उसके लिए जहाँ गठबंधन करनी है वो भी कर सकते हैं, जैसे अमेरिका से करनी है। तो उनसे ये कहना है कि हम जहाँ सेना भेजना है हम भेज देंगे। अफगानिस्तान में आपको मदद करने के लिए हम सेना भेजने के लिए तैयार हैं, लेकिन सारा शस्त्र आपको देना होगा। और अमेरिका तो सब थैली खोल देती, सारा भंडार खोल के दे देती। और इसीलिए मैं कहता हूं कि हमें विश्व शक्ति बननी है, तो हमें पहले एक चेतना जगानी पड़ेगी कि हमारे देश में कि हाँ, भारत माता की रक्षा में हम सब लोग विराट होंगे, और विराट के साथ शक्ति प्रदान करेंगे। जो हमें छेड़ेगा उसको छोड़ेंगे नहीं। जो हुआ है अभी लद्दाख में, जब चाइना ने आकर घुसकर हमारे देश में 4000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर हड़प कर लिया, उसके लिए आज तक हमने जबान खोला नहीं। हमने यहाँ तक नहीं कहा कि वो आक्रमण किया है, उनको खाली करना चाहिए, ये भी नहीं कहा। यहाँ तक कह गए कि कोई आया नहीं, कोई गया नहीं। इससे हम महाशक्ति बन नहीं सकते। हाँ, आपके पास कोई ऐसा लक्ष्य नहीं है कि महाशक्ति बनना है, तो फिर ठीक है, आप सन्यासी बनकर बैठिए। लेकिन महाशक्ति बननी है और इस देश की अखंडता को कायम रखनी है, इस देश की एकता को कायम रखनी है, तो जरूर कोई ना कोई हम लोगों को छेड़ेगा। हम नहीं छेड़ेंगे तो वो छेड़ेंगे। तो हमें ऐसे मुंह तो जवाब देने की स्थिति में होनी चाहिए कि कोई फिर उठेगा नहीं। छोटी छोटी जीतों में हमें प्रशंसा लेकर सारे जीवन भर इसी को लेकर हम संतुष्ट रहें, ये ठीक नहीं है। बांग्लादेश की लोग कहते हैं देखो हमने पाकिस्तान को 2 टुकड़ा कर दिया, वो पर्याप्त नहीं है। पाकिस्तान का 4 टुकड़ा करना चाहिए। और इसीलिए मैं आज ये कहता हूँ कि जहाँ हमें तलवार उठानी है, हमें तलवार उठाना चाहिए। जहाँ हम लोगों से मिलकर बातचीत करके करनी चाहिए, कर सकते हैं, वहाँ करनी चाहिए। और इसके लिए हमारी जो अर्थ प्रणाली है उसका भी विकास तेजी से करने की आवश्यकता। हम कर सकते हैं, नरसिम्हा राव ने करके दिखा दिया, और आज भी हम कर सकते हैं। हम गलत नीतियों के कारण आज हमारी इकोनॉमी बिगड़ रही है। ये कोरोना ने जरूर उसको थोड़ा और मुसीबत में हमें डाल दिया है, परंतु सही नीति के साथ हमारा देश उठ सकती है। जब जवाहरलाल नेहरू थी 3.5% की गति में हमारी जीडीपी बढ़ती थी। सब कहते थे ये हिंदू रेट ऑफ ग्रोथ है, इस प्रकार से हिंदुओं को बदनाम किया। लेकिन नरसिम्हा राव काल में हम 8% किया, उसके बाद 6% आसान हो गया। तो मैं तो कहता हूँ 10% भी आसान है, और 10% 10 साल के लिए होंगे तो हम दुनिया के विकसित देश बन जाएंगे। तो इस प्रकार से एक चेतना की आवश्यकता है, और इस चेतना को जगाने के लिए हमारी जो या अंग्रेजों ने जो हमारे दिमाग को खराब किया है, उस मंशा को ठीक करनी है। और हमें विश्व गुरु के लिए प्रयास करनी चाहिए। दूसरों का निमंत्रण आए और हमारी सम्मान हुई और बहुत बढ़िया भोज हुई, ये नीच का एक भावना है। इससे हमारे देश की नुकसान होगा। और मैं यही कह रहा हूँ कि आज रशिया तो, सोवियत यूनियन तो 16 टुकड़ा में बट गया, अब सिर्फ रशिया बाकी रह गई। उसका वो भी चाइना का गुलाम हो गया। अमेरिका थक गई, चाइना हमारे बगल में है, उसको एक बार हम उसकी पिटाई करेंगे तो चाइना से साथ भी शांति के साथ रह सकेंगे। लेकिन वो ऐसी चीज़ों को करने के लिए आवश्यकता है। तो विश्व गुरु बनना पर्याप्त नहीं है, विश्व शक्ति बननी है। उसके साथ साथ उसके लिए हमारी दृष्टिकोण होनी चाहिए और उस हिसाब से हमें आगे बढ़नी चाहिए। यही मैंने संक्षेप में जो मैं बता रहा हूँ, मैंने आज अंग्रेजी में सबको बताया है।
Arvind ji, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. As I said earlier, you have really put everything on the table for our viewers to think and see what can be done. You have also given alternatives. You also suggested what should be India's strategy in order to become a world power. Arth Shakti, India is Arth Shakti now. We are in the top 5 in the world in terms of PPP, GDP. And I've also said earlier that manpower wise also, scientifically educated manpower, we are number 1 in the world. Technically, IT we are leading, pharmaceutical industry, and there's so many other industries also we are leading. So in terms of the requirements, we all have the ingredients. But what we need is, as you said, Drad Nischay. We need a mental makeup, and we need to decide how to act. And what we did in Bangladesh in 1971, it is almost 50 years since then. And now it's time. We are much richer in every respect as compared to 1971. But only thing is, we should be richer in our mental position. We should make up our mind. Then only we can become a real Mahashakti in the world. My last briefest question is: can India see the realization of a tripolar world, India being one of the poles?
May I add 2 points?
Yeah.
First point is that you said in the beginning that India has got all the potential. I'm asking you, has it not been demonstrated in the explosion of the atom bomb, being the cheapest producers of satellite launchers? So, I mean, there are many areas where we have shown that, and now on virus also, in vaccines also, medicines, pharmaceuticals. So, potential of India has to be educated to our people. Don't be suffering from an inferiority complex. And second thing is that we had in Bangladesh, as you mentioned, shown that we are capable of fighting a war. But we made Pakistan too. But that's not enough. Now our goal should be to make Pakistan into 4. Baluchistan separate, and Sindh separate, and Pakhtunistan separate, and the leftover Punjab also separate. Then only Pakistan, the people know. We can't go on getting bled every day from terrorists. This terrorist is coming, that terrorist is coming. All are coming from Pakistan. So we should have these concrete goals and not rest. I'm not saying you said it, but I'm saying that let people not say, oh, we can do it. We must do it and keep doing it.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Swamy. I'm sure our viewers would now really be benefited by your vision and the perspective which you have put, and they'll be benefited by this discussion. Thank you, viewers. You have been supporting us, patronizing us. We are in the 127th episode of Words of Wisdom. Next week, Sunday, 8 p.m., we will be meeting again with a new topic, and Dr. Subramanian Swamy. The viewership is swelling, and it is thanks to our all viewers spread all over the globe. Thank you very much. And we also thank all the guests that have been participating in our episodes, our programs, because they have made the discussion richer and better. Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, the technical team led by Ashish Shetty, Gadgi Rakesh, Ishwar Iyer, Tejas, Swaminathan, and Vishal Mehta. We'll be meeting Sunday, 8 p.m. again with a new topic. Till then, Namaskar, Jai Hind.